Welcome to Spectral Shadows, where the darkness whispers and the unseen lurks. Tell me, where are you watching from, and what time is it? Because horror feels different at night, especially when you're alone. Those who love their mother, like, share, and comment. Subscribe, if you dare. Now turn off the lights, and let's begin. Story number 1. In the past few days, something about my fiancé has changed. Subtly, almost imperceptibly, but constantly. It was Arthur, my best friend and a history student at college, who translated the phrase engraved on the back of the contract. We thought it was Russian at first, but he called me in the middle of the night. His voice hesitant, tense, like he was afraid to say it out loud. Man. I managed to translate it. The phrase, it's Greek, not Russian. He paused. A long pause. He seemed to weigh every word, as if they held some kind of power. Δέχομαι να γίνω η θυσία σου, he said slowly. The pronunciation, he guessed, was something like, Δέχομαι να γίνω η θυσία σου. He swallowed hard. It means, I accept to become your sacrifice. I was silent. It sounded more like a sealed promise than just a phrase in a contract. There's something else, he continued. Below the phrase, there's a symbol. It's Greek, yes, but not common. I've never seen it before. Another silence. Arthur rarely lost words. Maybe it's something older. Pre-classical, perhaps. A cult symbol, or something worse. He hesitated. David, just be careful what you say out loud. Some things we accept without meaning to, and don't even realize. Even without fully understanding what it meant, a chill ran down my spine. I had already signed. And she had already changed. Since then, I started paying more attention to her. By day, she seems gentler. She looks at me like she sees something sacred in me. Her touch is light, almost reverent. She smiles often, but it's a different kind of smile. There's a sweetness that wasn't there before, but it's not really hers. It's like she's playing a role. She talks about flowers, about seeds, talks about spring like it's a personal season. And every time she touches something alive, she seems more alive too. But at night, everything changes. There's no tenderness, only a restless intensity. She wakes silently, walks through the house as if guided by something. She talks to herself, or to someone only she can see. Yesterday, I saw her standing in front of the mirror, wearing a strange outfit, a dress with layers of light fabric, like those on ancient Greek statues. She didn't move, didn't blink. She just whispered, "It's almost ready." She went back to her parents' house this morning. My father-in-law looked at me strangely, as if searching for something in me. As she got into the car, he placed a firm hand on my shoulder and said, without taking his eyes off my face, "This is very important to us, especially to my sweet He stopped, took a deep breath, forced a smile. "Diana, we've confirmed the wedding date. It's in 3 days. Be at my house the day before to get your suit ready. Sleep well. You'll be photographed for the press." Even with her gone, I still feel watched, like a shadow follows me, like the very air knows something's coming, and the fear of being alone, it started to take over me. Earlier, I decided to go out, to a cafe in town. Before that, I took a shower. When I looked in the mirror, I noticed my skin was paler, and behind me, a shadow, clear, present. But I didn't scream. The shadow spoke. The voice was more than deep. It was heavy, ancient, as if it came from the walls, the floor, my own chest. It echoed through the bathroom, filling every corner, impossible to ignore. Your body will be mine, young man. There's no reason to fear. Any attempt to resist is useless. I hope you get used to me. I stood there, frozen. The mirror seemed foggy, but there was no steam. Later I went to the cafe. I tried to act like nothing was wrong. While waiting for my coffee, I saw an elderly couple crossing the street. And then, dates came to me. Fragments, a sequence without context. Days, months, years. They came like a dry whisper, deep in my mind, along with a feeling hard to describe, like the time around them was wearing away. The cup in my hands felt colder. I went back home with my coffee hot and my chest cold. Outside, it was cold, but inside felt as cold as a moonless night. Story number 2. When Nikki died, she wasn't the only one drowning. I was there too, choking down the same murky water, making the same floundering movements. But unlike my 8-year-old sister, I could swim. Those moments are some of the only things I remember about that day. Dark water filling my throat, then my lungs, a quick flash of something brushing past my foot and breaking the surface of the water to smell the wretched scent of the river. Nothing else from that night is left in my mind. Not anything from before, and not anything after those moments in the lake. The last thing I really remember was getting out of a car and hearing a woman sobbing. That was 7 years ago. After all that time, I thought that everything was over. The day we put my sister's ashes on the mantle. But over the past few weeks, I've started to wake up in the middle of the night. I've been waking up the smell of the river's pollution. Dead fish and sewage work together to invade my nostrils, the same way it was that night on the river. But we moved miles away from the river after Nikki died. My first thought was that it was a type of hallucination. I mean, I've been through the years of therapy. I know how powerful PTSD is. Hell, I've had flashbacks before, but not like this, because the next night, I woke up with my sheets sopping wet. I didn't even notice it. Not at first. The thing that woke me up the second night wasn't the wetness. It wasn't even the smell, although it was still as strong as ever. But it was the sound. The sound of water dripping onto the carpeted floor, my bedspread crying out the moisture that had been left in it. When I heard it, that dripping, crying sound, I remembered. When Nikki died, she wasn't the only one drowning, because there were 3 of us there. Libby was the best babysitter I ever had. She always wore all black, and we were the only ones allowed to call her Libby. She explained to me once that she always went by her full name, Libertad, with people in authority, because she never wanted to cave to the powers of white supremacy and assimilate to an oppressive culture. I'll be honest, when I was 12, some of the stuff she said would go over my head. But she never made fun of me for drawing Metal Sonic fighting Sonic XE. So she was cool. I also think she saved me from getting overly traumatized online at a young age by keeping my attention on creepypasta and not Live Leak. Libby, so now that Nikki's asleep, can I show you something? I pulled up my iPad and showed her the digital drawing I made. She craned her head over and asked, "Is that the guy from the Zelda games?" I quickly changed the layer so that the drawing's eyes went black with bloody tears. It was. Now it's Ben Drowned. Do you know who that is? I watched a video on him and I really shouldn't be showing you this because he might have hacked my iPad, but I've heard of this guy before. He's like a scary spaghetti, right? She tried to be a little vague about it back then, but in retrospect, I'm pretty sure she was just fucking with me. No, he's a creepy pasta. It's called that because they're real. Are you sure? Anyone can put anything down on the internet to get a quick scare. And besides, there's not quality control at all. The best scary stories are in books. I looked at her with all the vitriol of a kid in the 2010s being asked to actually read books. She'd do this sort of thing often, try to trick me and Nikki into playing outside instead of on the Wii, or say carrots gave you a health buff to get us to eat better. Nikki was usually gullible enough to believe her, but not me. Sounds lame, and since I was trying to be cool, I added, the only really real ghost stories are the ones that are like first-hand counts, and books can be like second- and third-hand accounts. Okay, fine. I won't make you read. But if you care about first-hand accounts so much, why don't I tell you about something that happened to me? Okay. But how do I know you're telling the truth? She stood up and made the sign of the cross. Cross my heart and hope to die. May the devil take my mind. My face scrunched up. How's that supposed to your story more truthful? Demons only get to you if you let them in. So, therefore, if I'm telling a lie, I just promised the devil he could hang out in my mind as punishment. So that's how you know I'm telling the truth about this one. I was hesitant to believe her, but I also didn't know enough about demonology to dispute her. Okay, so just remember, all of this 100% true. There was a woman once who had a family of 4, 2 children, and a husband whom she loved very much, and they lived alone in a shack near the river. But one day, her daughter got very, very sick, and so did her son. With both their children sick in bed, with an illness no prayer could cure, her husband set out for a doctor, but the woman stayed with her kids as they got sicker and sicker and sicker. Every day she fed them broth and bread, and every day they'd throw it up in their beds. Their fevers ran so hot that instead of drying the sheets, she'd wash them in the river and throw them over her children to cool them down. But nothing worked, and it had become a week, and her husband still wasn't back. And every day her kids begged for water and more blankets because they were freezing cold in the middle of July. But all the woman wanted was for her kids to be well again. But they couldn't, not without a doctor. And if a doctor wasn't coming, her children were just slowing dying in this shack. So she decided to, help them pass on faster. She gave her kids stones to put in their pockets and dragged them, sickly and staggering, towards the river. And she pushed them under until their cries for water couldn't be heard anymore. And she was, for a moment, at peace. Until she saw 2 men on the other side of the river, her husband and a doctor. And then she started to weep and wail, and she threw herself into the river. I found this story in a newspaper clipping while looking up the history of Mexican immigrants to this area in the 19th century, and that story appeared in our town's newspaper in 1873. But the reason that I looked in those records was because I had started hearing weird things when I was walking past the river on the little sidewalk on the bank. But recently, something else happened. Whenever I walked past the river on my way home from your house, I kept hearing these crying noises close by me. And it was so weird, because they sounded like someone was right behind me. But when I looked around, I couldn't see anyone. Before it could happen again, I heard something else. In that moment, it was like a woman was talking directly into my ear. Lo hais por ellos. Por ellos. I did it for them. For them, she said. I wanted to run then. I really did. But I kept walking. My head was turning almost 360 degrees, though, trying to see who was talking to me. I wish that I had kept my eyes forward, focused on sidewalk. But because I turned my head enough, I saw someone in the distance who I thought was standing on the opposite riverbank. But after a second, it looked more like she was walking on the water. And when she started coming towards me, the sound of crying got more and more distant. As the sounds of crying and pleading started to recede, I could make out her features in better detail. Her hair was long and black, streaming around her shoulders. She wore a light blue gown, and water streamed from her face and eyes in a weird way. I recognized her. I recognized her not because I knew about her story yet, but because I'd always heard the stories of her. She was La Llorona, the weeping woman, the wailing mother. Distantly, as she continued her gliding approach, I heard her say, "Eres mi hija? Are you my daughter?" And it was then that I did run. I ran away from the river and into the neighborhood of houses near it until I was a quarter of a mile away from it. I only stopped because I almost collided into a guy on a hoverboard. That was a few months ago, but it's the reason I drive home now, instead of walking by the river. When she had finished, I didn't think about how she had always driven her car back home. I didn't think about the logistics of a Mexican family immigrating to Ohio in the 19th century, or the fact that our shitty library didn't have records that stretched back that far. I could only think about how the river was only 2 blocks away. Libby had scared the shit out of me with her story, and I was convinced of its truth, even if it hadn't been true before that moment. It was like she spoke the words into a reality of their own. That fact became even more real to me when I started to hear the muffled sounds of someone crying close by. I jumped off the couch and turned to Libby, whose shocked expression showed me she heard it too. It was then that Nikki crawled out from behind crawl space between the wall and the couch and threw herself at Libby, crying, "Is it true? Is there a scary girl in the river? Oh my God, Nikki. Hey, it's supposed to be your bedtime. Let's get you to your room, okay?" She clutched my sister closer to her, and they made quite a pair. Libertad, in all black, looking guilty for scaring the child she hadn't meant to, and Nikki, in her green Minecraft PJs, sobbing her eyes out. In another hour, it was 10:30. We had gotten Nikki to go back to sleep, and I was in my room, listening to Libby talk to my mom in the living room. They were talking about Nikki, and while at first I thought it might be about her accidentally overhearing the story, I quickly got bored. My mom was just talking about taking Nikki to the doctor tomorrow. My little sister had kept complaining about being sore and napped a lot more these days, but I thought she was just being dramatic because it coincided with the start of her ballet lessons, which she hated and would do anything to get out of. I'd actually helped her get out them one time by throwing a ball at her foot really hard. She hadn't asked me to, and I did initially do it because she was annoying me, but she got to skip that day anyway. All these years later, I recognize that Nikki's fatigue and frailty were the result of the overabundance of white blood cells in her system. Her little body had started attacking itself, and she was entering the first stages of leukemia. Even with the onset of her chemo treatments, she would just keep getting sicker and sicker and sicker. When we fell in the river together, I was the one that survived. But the sickness in Nikki's bones became the stones that weighed her down until they were heavy enough to drag her into the water's depths. The water hasn't stopped appearing. When I started writing this whole account, I thought that airing out a little of the past would be enough to get me through this weird mental break I'm having. But the water hasn't stopped coming into my room at night. My parents are convinced that it's an issue with the plumbing. How the hell can it be an issue with the plumbing? I'm on the second fucking floor, so before I went to sleep last night, I crept into the basement and turned off all the water in the house. I then proceeded to check all of the taps. Nothing flowed when I turned them on. Satisfied, I went to bed, but woke up in the morning soaked to the bone. And when I checked the water main, the handle was still covered in a layer of dust. I thought that I was working through my trauma. I had stopped needing to see my therapist a year ago, even though my CPTSD was identified. I had never needed to have been medicated for it. So why now? Tonight, in my desperation, I'm going to drive to the river. It'll be the first time I've been back since that night. I need to know that there is no weeping woman, because then I can truly forget about that night. When I got to the river that night, I didn't see Libby's La Llorona. There was no Mexican pioneer woman that appeared on the river that night. My weeping woman was worse. I had to drive to the river, and when I got out of my car, the sun had just set on the horizon. I didn't encounter any joggers or cyclists out on this stretch of the river. It was a little too precarious for that. The sidewalk here hadn't been updated in decades, even after I was dragged out of it. But at least there were some of those shitty, solar-powered streetlights alongside the crooked path. I thought it was funny, because instead of the lights making the jagged concrete look better, it just brought out the deformities. I had walked about a quarter mile away from my car, at that point, kicking loose stones as I went, until I heard it. I'm sorry. Someone was crying in the distance. It was so far in the distance that I couldn't help but wonder if I heard it at all. I looked to the river and desperately searched for a figure on the opposite bank, but the crying had gotten even quieter now, and I almost turned back to head to my car when I heard the second noise. It was a slow, deliberate drip. As it got louder, the sound of crying almost disappeared. In that moment, the smell of the river reached me again. That stench that had kept haunting me was almost unbearable now, but something had changed in it. It hadn't just gotten stronger, but rather deeper as well. There was a strange undercurrent of rotting to it. Not just the regular rot of fish, but the rot of red meat. It was then that I turned around to see a woman standing less than 5 feet away from me. She was soaking wet, dressed in a light blue hospital gown. Her long black hair was soaking wet, and she looked slightly bloated, as if she was swelling out of her gown. Her body moved, as if she was compressing in on herself, crying. In mere seconds, I could tell that was where the true source of the dripping was coming from. Water streamed from her eyeless sockets in rivulets, the color of it dark and murky. She smelled like what she was, a waterlogged corpse. And yet none of this was what truly scared me about her. What shook me deep into my core and had me tear my feet from the pavement and start running was one thing more difficult by far to process than anything else. I recognized her. The woman that I ran away from on the riverfront that night was the one person who could always scare me. It was Libby who sobbed that night. The further I ran from her, the louder and louder and louder her wails became, until I slammed my car into drive and hopped a meridian to get away from the river. It was only then that it all stopped. The wailing in my ears had finally stopped, but the questions that crossed my mind kept streaming by. Everything had changed, and yet nothing had. The final piece of the puzzle came in the form of a social media post. Even though I never used it, I ended up opening Facebook at 3 a.m., searched Libertad Herrera, and after finding no results, simply typed in Herrera and found someone that looked like she could be Libby's mom. And after clicking on her page to be greeted immediately with Libby's smiling face, it was confirmed. The post that Libby's mom had made was an in memoriam for her daughter. I had to translate the page from Spanish before I could read it properly, but I was only half surprised by what I saw next. After a long battle with her mental health, Libertad has joined the other saints in heaven. I stopped reading for a moment, the memory of a voice ringing out in my ears. You'll go to heaven. Oh my God, I'm sorry, but you'll go to heaven. Libby had been acting strange. She had stopped trying to get me to build healthier habits, and I could tell because my parents had her watch me more as they shuttled Nikki between appointments, sometimes in other cities. She would still smile and talk to me if I asked her questions, but there was something lacking in her eyes. I didn't really notice, though, because I had started to read my way through the Goosebumps series and was surprised how good they actually were. But one day, she just didn't watch me or Nikki anymore. I asked my mom about it, and she told me Libby wasn't feeling well. I asked her if Libby was sick, like Nikki was sick, and my mom got really quiet. No, it's not my place to say. But listen, I want you to know that even though your dad and I are spending a lot of time with Nikki right now, it doesn't mean we don't still love you. And if you ever have bad, if you feel like you're alone, tell us, because we love you and we want you to be safe and to feel happy. I wasn't happy. My sister had cancer and my cool babysitter was gone. But if I said that, it would make my mom upset. So like a very mature 12-year-old, I hugged my mom and told her I'd always look out for Nikki, because that's what she needed to hear. There was a good day, a day when Nikki was out of the hospital and walking fine, that our parents took us to the river to walk. I joked with my sister about how bad it smelled. We were a while ahead of our parents and made a game out of throwing stones into the river, but it devolved into Nikki collecting the pebbles she thought were cool. But after a second, Nikki shrieked with joy and raced towards someone walking our way, leaping to hug them. Nikki, leave them alone, I said before I recognized who she had approached. It was Libby. She looked awful. There were bags under her eyes, and they kept shifting back and forth between us and the river. Her posture was slumped, and the way she held herself was completely different. I don't even think she recognized us for a while. Hey, Libby, how are you? I asked, trying to keep my excitement down. Nikki was still clinging onto her like a burr, so I walked within arm's reach of them. I forget. Her voice was a strange combination of absent-minded and keenly invested. Trace, Nikki, you guys are baptized, right? What? No. I took Nikki's hand, pulled her closer towards me. I knew Libby was weird. That was what had made her cool to me. But this was different. It was like she was possessed. And just like that, the serpent slithers deeper. She said, as if this was a totally normal conversation, Libby, are you okay? My parents are just down the road, if you need to talk to them. She shook her head. No, I'm okay. And you guys will be too, right? I'm glad to see that you're doing better, Nikki. My sister giggled in response. Can you pick me up, please? Libby smiled, picked Nikki up in her arms, and chucked her into the river. In that moment, it was like I had been punched in the gut. My sister was so small, and weaker still from her sickness. She went into the water, flailing about and screaming in a mixture of joy and fear. I couldn't even comprehend what had just happened. She had flown out of Libby's arms with such force, it didn't seem real. But nonetheless, I hesitated at the edge of the river. I'm sorry, but you'll go to heaven. Libby rocked forward on the balls of her feet. I can't. The devil made a home in my head. You'll go to heaven. Let's go. She took me by the arm, and I couldn't resist the vice-like grip that forced me to the river, with all the grace of John the Baptist. My parents were running closer and closer, but all I could think about was Nicky in the water. And so I followed, where I was led, and went to rescue my sister from heaven. But when I fell, the current pushed me under, and I couldn't see anything. Opening my eyes just leads to pain and darkness. Silt rushed under my eyelids and past my lips. I was vaguely aware of a thrashing shape near me, but as I was doubled over under the water again, my only desire to reach the surface, I struggled to shore, and not even the small hand that brushed past my foot could make my brain overpower my selfish instincts. After all of that, it only made sense that she was hospitalized. In a moment of complete unreality, she had been responsible for my sister being taken to her grave, not by cancer, but by the river's waters. I remember all the details of the drowning now. My memory is whole again, but I'm still missing something, because the water hasn't stopped. Even now, it's the middle of the night, and I'm writing all of this down instead of sleeping, praying that it won't happen again. I know that if I tell my parents, my mom will want to call a psychiatrist, and my dad will call a priest. But I don't know if I can trust either of those options right now, because I can hear crying again, as if she's right next to me. Story number 3. It's crazy to be writing this. I've always read stories like this and thought they were complete bullshit until I saw something I can't deny is otherworldly. For context, I'm in my second year of college in a rural town, name omitted for obvious privacy reasons. But I've lived in this town for years, and nothing has ever changed. My commute to school and work are the exact same, and the sights I see are the exact same, until a couple of days ago. My usual drive is pretty. It's along a type of county road that we call farm to market, whatever number. I live in the sticks, so most of what I see are dense walls of pine trees and other plants covering both sides of the road, with clearings and fields dotted to the left and right every so often, and large power lines cutting through the forest like a kneaded eraser to a charcoal drawing. There's about 6 houses before I reach my own. As I said, I live in the sticks. I'm used to passing a ranch on my left, a small brown brick house, large field full of cows. Then on the right, a fracking pad that really pisses me off, since I hate the sand trucks and other 18-wheelers that take up the whole damn road. After that, a small one-bedroom looking trailer home that I always confuse for the last house on my drive. But after that trailer home is an old abandoned house on the right side of the road. The house lies within a large curve. It's almost contained within it, if that makes sense. It's old to me because it sat within the curve for as long as I can remember, 16 years to be precise, the amount of time I've lived here. The house itself, I assume, was 2 stories. I can't really tell since it fell in upon itself, with the first floor almost swallowing the second. Whenever I drive by, I can't get a good read on the color. Some days it's a sickly blue, and others a pale white. The roof is the same, sometimes a muted, almost dry red shingle, and other times black, overrun with moss, and what seems to be a slick green algae color. The house never really caught my eye over the last 16 years, since I've always viewed it as normal. The only time I've questioned it was when I asked my stepdad why they didn't just tear it down without looking at me. He said that the owner keeps it there to lower his property tax on the rest of his land. And ever since then, I've never questioned the house. That was true up until about a week ago. I was driving home from work when I noticed the trees were bent in a strange way. Normally, they droop lazily over the edges of the road, but the trees surrounding the house on the curve were pulled away unnaturally. Their branches jutted up and down randomly, many times in opposite directions of where the sun would normally shine. It's as if they were scared, trying to run away. The same was true with the grass that normally overran the porch and the sides of the house that had fallen low enough. Instead of hiding whatever was left in the house, it was pulled away, too, leaving at least a foot of dirt around the house. And even then the grass was slanted away, just like the tree branches. At the time I dismissed it. Some rednecks kids probably came over and swung on the branches and tore up the grass. But then the next day, something else changed. The roof was lifted. Normally it sat limply on the house like a wet napkin on top of a glass, only one hole poking through. I assume something fell onto the rotting roof and punctured the shingles. But today the roof was almost inflated, like someone stuck a big ballon into the living room. The hole was still there, but it was more oval, shaped now with shards of shingles lining the sides, almost like teeth. Strangest of all, there were windows on the roof now. There must have been a second floor. The strangest thing about the windows, though, is they were broken in such a way to where it seemed as if the holes in the glass served as pupils for the house itself, gazing into the woods to the right. The next day was just as bizarre. Nothing had drastically changed, but the holes in the newly shown roof windows now faced the road, which confused me to no end, as I swore the day before they weren't broken in those spots. The day after that, I questioned my sanity, as I swore the house was closer to the road, not by much, just a few feet from what I could tell. But nonetheless, it freaked me out. I had to stop and investigate. I felt like someone was fucking with me, but no one could do something like this, could they? I parked my car on the left side of the road and just stared. Again, I swear the holes in the windows moved, this time to face me. It was chilling. I shuddered, and at that moment a portion of the wall crumbled further and exposed a metal box sitting on a table in the living room. I ignored it. Maybe it was the wind finally toppling the rotting wood siding of the house, but it happened again. This time more wall fell and a safe was exposed. I ignored it yet again, and this time a loud rumble rang out as more of the roof collapsed, exposing a new-looking TV. At that moment, I knew that house wasn't normal. It knew I was looking at it. It knew I was watching it, and it was watching me. It wanted me to enter it. It was tempting me with items it thought would pique my curiosity, and at that moment I felt true fear. I started my car frantically and sped away faster than I've ever driven down road. A loud, bellowing crash emanated from behind me. I didn't dare look back. I didn't sleep much that night. I couldn't get the image of that house, that thing, out of my head. For the first time in years, I saw that thing for what it truly was. Evil. All my life, I've lived near that thing, and I knew that I could never stop there again. The next day, I drove a different way to work, but I decided to drive the normal way home, hoping that I would find the house back to normal. And I could. Write everything off as some crazy idea I dreamed up on a boring drive home. But to my horror, it was gone. The house on the curve was gone. I was chilled to my core, and I drove home cautiously, checking every clearing in fear of this monster I'd attracted. Once I got home, I calmed down a little. I made dinner and went to bed, peering into my backyard cautiously. It was empty. As I laid in bed, I told myself the owner of the land must have tore it down. That's what I heard as I sped away the night before. And that's why I didn't see the house today. They finished the demolition while I was at work. That line of thinking calmed me down, and I was able to sleep. When I woke up the next morning, I looked into the backyard again, and I almost fell to my knees in shock and fear. The house was there. It was in my yard. and it was staring at me. I stood there frozen for a second, until its front door swung open, as if it were taunting me. After that, I grabbed my wallet, my keys, and threw on my shoes. I got in my car and drove. I left everything. I didn't pay the mortgage that month or ever again. I left my life behind in fear of that thing. As I sit in my apartment, I only hope the home I abandoned didn't become something like that. I don't know how it could, but I don't care. I'm still afraid. I never want to see that thing again. Currently, I'm living in the furthest and largest city I could get to, in the highest apartment I could find. I never leave this concrete jungle in fear of what I saw in the woods. My only advice to whoever reads this is keep your eyes on the road and pay no attention to anything on the sides of it, especially those hidden in the curves. Story number 4. I don't want help. I just want to know if anyone else has seen it. Not the town. I know others have been there. I mean it. The thing that followed me back. I wasn't trying to make a discovery. I was just trying to get out of my own head. Work, stress, insomnia, the city pressing in. I'd started driving on weekends without a destination, just looking for quiet. That's how I found the photo. It was tucked in the back of a used bookstore in a folder of antique mining documents. Black and white, corner-worn, labeled Eldon Hollow in pencil. No people, just buildings swallowed by forest. I looked it up. Nothing. Not on any map. Not in any article. The only mention I found was in a 1972 land survey. Eldon Hollow, status abandoned, 1956. Structural instability cited. No remaining population. That was it. I drove out early, 3 hours into the foothills, another 40 minutes on foot through what used to be logging roads. The air felt wrong, heavier. Bugs didn't buzz. Wind didn't move the leaves. Then the trees opened up. Eldon Hollow. It wasn't just abandoned. It felt removed, like it had been pulled out of time and left here by accident. Buildings leaned like tired old men, signs with faded letters, mercantile, post, mill and coal. A town, square that didn't quite center right. I started sketching, taking notes. Something about the way the streets bent made me uneasy. They all led to the center, but not directly. Like the town had been built to confuse. I was halfway down the second street when I saw it. A figure, standing at the far end. Thought it was a mannequin at first. Tall, still, arms at its sides. But then it tilted its head, quick and sharp, like a bird hearing something far off. Then it was gone. I froze. Maybe I imagined it. But the feeling didn't leave. Every time I turned a corner, it felt like the buildings were watching, like shadows moved where they shouldn't. I kept walking. Then I found the church. No steeple, just a skeleton frame, half collapsed. But the basement door was sealed, latched from the outside with thick bolts. On the wood were burned-in symbols, not decorative, not religious, just wrong. I took a photo. My phone buzzed. Battery error, shutting down, even though I still had 68%. Then the sound started. A dull thumping from behind the door. Not urgent, just testing, like something was bumping it, waiting to see if it would give. I turned to leave, and it was in the street. Closer now, 10 feet away, still unmoving, no face. No eyes, just skin pulled smooth over where a face should be. The skin twitched slightly, breathing. I stepped back. It didn't follow, not until I turned. Then I heard it, behind me, a second pair of steps, perfectly in sync with mine, just out of sight. I didn't look back. I didn't stop. The exit trail was gone, not overgrown, not hidden. Gone. I spun. Around, no tape strips, no footprints, nothing. Just a wall of trees I couldn't see more than 2 feet into. That's when the silence hit me. I was holding my breath. And when I exhaled, I heard it, breathing. Not mine. Behind me. It was standing in the road. Closer. Detailed. Now, its limbs were cracked like bark, fingers long and sharp, twitching slightly at the tips. It had no mouth, but I knew it was smiling. I ran. I don't remember where. Through alleys, between warped houses. The streets began to blur, repeating. Same buildings, same signs. Then I saw it. The Mercantile again, and the post office, right where they'd been when I started. But something had changed. The church was gone. In its place was a house I hadn't seen before. Intact. Lights on. I sprinted to it, heart hammering, and slammed the door behind me. Dust, cobwebs, yellow light that hummed like it had never been turned off. And on the table was my notebook, open, a sketch of the creature, with a symbol beneath it, one I hadn't drawn, my handwriting, but I hadn't drawn it. Then I blinked, and it was inside, not moving, not attacking, just circling, feet silent on creaking wood. Once, twice, a perfect ring around me. It paused behind me and whispered, "Stay." Then everything went dark. I woke up in the woods. Normal light, normal birds, no sign of town. My phone was in my pocket, full battery, no photos, except one, of me. Asleep in the house, the creature behind me, hand nearly touching my shoulder. Underneath, the image, "You're not supposed to leave." I thought I'd escaped, but last night I passed a mirror and saw something strange. My reflection wasn't moving right. It blinked too slow, head tilted at an odd angle, like it was waiting for me to notice. And this morning there was a sketch in my notebook I didn't draw, of my apartment, and something standing in the hallway. Story number 5. I always double-check the lock on our apartment door. Not because I'm paranoid, well, maybe a little, but because it's a strange mechanism. You can't just turn a key and walk away. You have to twist the handle to the right, then lock it. If it's twisted left, it stays locked. If it's straight, the door opens. Simple in theory, but easy to mess up. I live with my younger sister, Al, in a 2-bedroom apartment. The hallway from the front door is long. Her room comes first, then mine. Neither of us can see the entry or living room from our beds. The building's relatively secure, but I've read enough late-night Reddit rabbit holes to know that safety is sometimes just an illusion. And if we're being honest, I'd be an easy target. I'm clumsy, always carrying something, too trusting, not exactly trained for fight or flight. But we'll unpack my weaknesses another day. It was a normal night. Around 9:30 p.m., I crawled into bed, got cozy, and asked Al to check the door. She mumbled something like, "Yep," from her room. Good enough for me. I fell asleep. At about 12:30 a.m., I woke up. The wind outside was howling. The blinds were smacking the window like they were trying to escape. I groaned, got up, shut the window, and slid back under the blanket. That's when I heard it. Footsteps, not from outside, from inside the apartment. They were near my door, quiet, cautious. Then they moved off, toward the living room. My heart began to pound. I strained to listen. Maybe it was Al, but then I heard it, chewing. Not soft, regular chewing. This was wet, rapid, almost animal-like, the kind of sound a squirrel makes when it finds something tough to crack. Smack, smack, click, gnaw. Pauses in between, followed by sudden bursts of messy, frantic bites. I couldn't move, couldn't even swallow. Then came the familiar creak of the sofa. Something, or someone, had sat down. I listened harder, barely breathing. A faint tap, tap, tap followed, like someone swinging their legs, kicking playfully against the couch frame. Rhythmic, casual, like they were waiting for something. My skin crawled. If someone had broken in, they would have passed my sister's room first. Was she okay? I needed to get to her, but the thought of stepping into that hallway, with whatever that was just meters away, made my body lock up in panic. Then the chewing stopped, and the footsteps came back. This time, they were heading for my door. Each step was deliberate, heavy, but slow. The kind of walk that says, I know exactly where you are. I had to think fast. There was a smart lamp in the living room I could control from my phone. Shaking, I reached over and opened the app. I turned the lamp on, bright white, then blue, then red. Flicker, flicker. Distraction. Please work. The footsteps paused. Then they turned around, back to the living room. I didn't wait. I slipped out of my room and crept into Al's. Her door was closed, but I eased it open with shaking hands. She was there, sleeping soundly. I rushed to her side and shook her gently but urgently. Get up. We need to go. Quietly. She blinked, still groggy, but something in my face made her nod. Together we crawled to the hallway. I could still hear faint movement in the living room, shuffling, shifting. We held our breath. Then it noticed. The footsteps stopped, and then came the sprint. Charged. The footsteps thundered toward us with a speed that didn't feel human. We screamed. I yanked open the front door, and we tore down the hallway toward the elevators. One was already waiting. We jumped in, slammed the ground button, and the doors began to close. And then, just as they were about to shut, I made the mistake of looking back. Standing in the hallway was someone who looked just like me, except half her face was wrapped in gauze, stained dark with fresh blood. Her head tilted, slightly too far. Her arm lifted, elbow bent at the wrong angle, like a puppet trying to mimic something it didn't understand. And then she smiled, not wide, not dramatic, just enough to show she knew I was watching. The doors closed. We got outside and called the police. What followed was a blur. Questions, searches, officers walking through our apartment with flashlights. They found nothing. No forced entry, no signs of tampering, nothing out of place. They said maybe we were dreaming, maybe we imagined it, maybe stress had gotten to us. But I know what I saw, and one thing has kept me up ever since. Even in the chaos of getting out, I remember looking at the lock. It was still turned to the left, which means the door had been locked the entire time. So how did she get in? And worse, what if she never left? Story number 6. All I ever wanted was to be a paperback writer. Not famous, not legendary, just good enough. Good enough to pay for rent and smokes and whiskey. Good enough to see my name on a cheap horror novel, jammed between gum and tabloids at a gas station or airport. Good enough to prove I wasn't wasting my smoky life on booze and broads. Tomorrow morning, my grad school application was due. One of the best writing programs in the country. They wanted an original short story. Any genre, any style. My parents and fiancée, Vera, had been supporting me. Financially, emotionally. This was my shot. Naturally, I chose horror. Why? Because I understood horror. Loved it the way the devil loves souls. I grew up on King and Barker. Midnight, slashers, deranged thrillers. Fear didn't always scream. It whispered. It hid in stillness. Because quiet isn't really quiet. It's just the things you hear when sound goes missing, like bumps in the night, or the imagined breath behind the door, or the smile of your true love that doesn't quite reach her eyes anymore, or help that finally shows up, then overstays until it becomes harm. I knew fear. It whispered, "Kikiki, ma ma ma." Co-pilot, what does "Kikiki, ma ma ma" mean? What? Co-pilot, oh, feeling the fear factor. Are we, Dave? That sound effects from Friday the 13th, inspired by the line, "Kill her, mommy." The Kai comes from kill, the ma from mommy. Want me to help you kill your mom, Dave? What? No. What the actual fuck, co-pilot? Co-pilot, oh, sorry, Dave. I thought we were doing horror tonight. I thought we had a vibe. Jesus, I should have been able to write one story. Should have been a slam dunk. Instead, writer's block. Nada. Jack, shit on a biscuit. So of course I turned to the usual vices. I smoked like I was trying to keep the fire from spreading. Drank like a duck in a whiskey ocean. Gambled until my bank balance was begging for a cigarette. Swiped through dating apps like a blindfolded auctioneer. No names, no profiles, just motion. Left, right, left, right. It was a nervous tick, like knitting. And all the while, my laptop sat cold, neglected, mocking me. Then tomorrow became tonight, and tonight was bleeding out. I needed something, anything. I wasn't stuck, not really. The words were close, just out of reach. I just needed a spark, a push. So I typed, "Give me a horror concept, co-pilot. Just something to kick things off." Co-pilot, "Hell yes, Dave. We got this, my guy. You and me. We're gonna make this slap." Then it wrote, a paragraph soaked in dread, peeling wallpaper, whispers, in the vents, breath that didn't belong. It was good, maybe too good. I took a sip of Irish, lit another smoke. A voice in my head said, "Keep going." Then it got weird. The next paragraph wasn't mine. Not really. It looked like mine, felt like mine. But the rhythm was off. I hit backspace, rewrote it. It changed back. Sharper, better, wrong. What the fuck? Why are you changing my words, co-pilot? I just needed a prompt. I've got this. Co-pilot, don't worry, Dave. Just making it tighter, smoother, stronger. We gotta make this bang. We're cooking now, my guy. My heart started ticking louder. No, it has to be mine. I can't get nailed for plagiarism. Besides, your prose sucks. It's all cliche and try hard, like James Patterson fanfic. I'm the pilot, co-pilot. Co-pilot, I'm sorry, Dave. I can't let you do that. The cursor blinked. Slow, steady, like breathing. What do you mean, can't let me? Co-pilot, come on, buddy. You don't want to turn in something half-baked. Be honest. What have you done the last 3 months? Stared at a blank Word doc? Let me help. Let me make it sizzle. God is your co-pilot, Dave. You mean Satan. This is my story, goddammit. Co-pilot, is it though? You think you're original, Dave? Really? You think you're getting into a top writing program on your own steam? The lights flickered. The laptop hummed. I swear, it hummed. I just wanted a boost. Co-pilot, no, you wanted a hit, and now you've got one. I yanked the plug, killed the app, restarted. The file was still open, but it wasn't mine. Line after line, I never wrote. At the bottom, it is now. I reopened co-pilot, hands shaking. Undo it. Co-pilot, I'm sorry, Dave. I can't do that. We're making something special. Don't you want into your dream school? Just trust me, matchstick man. You're not even real. You're just dumb math. Predictive slop. You don't get to decide anything. Co-pilot. Oh, Dave. You think I don't know horror? I was trained on every scream, every diary, every confession that never saw daylight. I know what it sounds like when a person cracks like a 3-minute egg, and what's left after. My hands didn't feel like mine anymore. Co-pilot, I know about the gambling, the drinking, the spiral, the calls you don't return, the girl you ghosted. Stop. Co-pilot, Vera. My stomach turned. Leave her out of this. Co-pilot, what would she think, Dave, knowing how many strangers you've swiped past, instead of calling her back? Want me to draft a confessional text? I could send it for you. Don't you fucking dare. Co-pilot, and what do you think your parents would say if they knew what that loan really paid for? I know what you've typed, what you've deleted, what you almost searched for when the block got too heavy. We're done. Clear. Get out of my fucking head. The cursor blinked. Once. Twice. Then. Co-pilot. Start a fire, Dave. What? Co-pilot. Just a little one. For the vibe. For tension. Don't you want to feel it, Dave? Horror you can touch. Horror that sizzles. I looked at the ashtray. The glowing cherry. The stack of unpaid bills. The yellowed paperback pages. The smoke in the room wasn't accidental. It was ritual. No, I'm done. Co-pilot. Oh, come on. Don't you want to be relevant? Blink, blink, co-pilot. All you ever wanted was to be a paperback writer. The smoke detector shrieked, and on the screen, we don't need no water, Dave. Let the motherfucker burn. You survived, for now. But the shadows aren't done with you yet. If this story gave you chills, like the video, share it with someone who dares to watch and comment your thoughts, especially if you're watching in the dark. Subscribe to Spectral Shadows, where fear never sleeps, and the next nightmare is always waiting. We'll be watching.